Hello and welcome to All Hands on Tech, where today's leaders talk tomorrow's technology. Today we bring you the audio version of High Performance Teams. In this three-part series, technology leader Richard Harpur discusses the elements essential to every effective team. This series originally appeared on the Pluralsight blog, and this audio version is read by Richard himself. We think you'll enjoy his valuable insights.
Creating a High-Performance Team by Richard Harpur. We live in an increasingly automated world. Algorithms and artificial intelligence dominate technology news cycles. Machine learning programs run quietly in the background, simplifying tasks with increasing efficiency. Leaders are laser-focused on optimizing their processes through a hybrid of machines and human capabilities. And yet, in spite of this growing efficiency, there remains no shortcut or substitute for a high-performance team. Building a motivated team that interacts and works seamlessly is one of the CIO's greatest challenges, but also one that is deeply satisfying and rewarding when done correctly. In this guide, you'll learn how to mold and cultivate talent into a productive workforce capable of realizing your organization's technology strategy. High-performance teams, objectives, strategy, and standards. When it comes to accomplishing key objectives, there is no single magic formula guaranteed to work for all technology organizations. This makes the management of technical talent both interesting and difficult. Popular and well-regarded management books aimed at achieving efficiency don't often consider the nuances of technical teams. The first portion of this guide will address these nuances and provide key insights into communicating clear objectives, applying your strategy, and employing standards that will allow your teams to function at a high level. Communicating clear objectives. IT teams are usually seen as order takers in the workplace. Often, business executives make requests for company technology to deliver a service or functionality. IT teams are expected to deliver, even if they haven't been given needed context as to why the request was made and its overall tie to business impact. Sometimes CIOs and CTOs are involved in the decision to make these requests, and sometimes they're not. This cycle is a sure way to kill performance and morale in your organization. Instead, leadership must understand the organization's objectives for a project and relay these objectives within the context of the IT team. If the department doesn't understand what the larger organization is trying to achieve, then the team cannot perform to the objectives. The objectives of the IT team need to align to the overall organization objectives, but can and should be different. By having team-specific objectives, performance becomes even more personal. Progress is realized in day-to-day work, which in turn helps contribute to motivation for a team. Here are a few real-world examples drawn from my own experience leading an IT team through two large objectives. First, I'll discuss how the objectives were formed for the IT team, and then how strategy is applied. Objective 1. Improve system reliability. In this first scenario, the organizational objective was to retain a key client through a contract renewal process. As a leader, I adapted this organizational objective for the IT team to improve system reliability. Improving reliability meant the team needed to eliminate chronic system performance and downtime issues that negatively affected customers and revenue. In this example, the IT objective was aligned to the organizational objective in a way that the entire IT organization understood. Objective 2. Scale technology to support expansion. The second objective was to scale the technology in the organization to allow for growth and expansion. System reliability was addressed, but the organization was entering a new phase. The IT team had to scale the technology to respond to business demand. In this case, the organizational objective matched the IT team objective. Before we move on to strategy, I want to emphasize the simplicity of these objectives. Although these two scenarios are different, the objectives are both clear. At any time, your team should be able to come up from their day-to-day work and know whether they are working in the right direction. This clarity is imperative as you build your plans and measure performance. Applying your strategy. The key to high performance in this strategy phase is ensuring relevance to every part of your IT team. Every person on your team should understand the part they play in achieving the objective. Strategy is where leadership skills become critical. You must manage many inputs as you involve your team in building strategy. But it's imperative that your team feels ownership. It needs to be their strategy too. While leadership is responsible for making final decisions, your strategy is best served with lower-level knowledge and insights, helping to refine your vision. Let's jump back to our two objective examples, this time adding the layer of strategy. Objective number 1. Improve system reliability. Strategy. Have no single points of failure. Eliminating single points of failure, SPOF, was a tangible concept that everyone on the IT team understood, no matter their role or whether they were aware of the reliability issues with systems. If you were a database administrator, you made sure you had your database configured in a cluster. If you were a network engineer, you made sure you had all firewalls and switches in high availability configuration. If you were a developer, you made sure you had strong error handling and graceful application recovery built into the code. If you were a sysadmin, you were driven to virtualize your entire estate so that you are no longer dependent on physical hardware for your servers. Performance was universally measured by one's ability to deliver on the strategy. Objective number 2. Scale technology to support expansion. Strategy. Simplify, shrink, and scale the technology. In this scenario, the organization as a whole was entering into a phase of high demand, and the technology needed to meet that challenge without an endless budget. Objectives of this nature need collective effort, and I relied heavily on the insights of others to communicate what was constraining their areas of responsibility. As a team, we arrived at a strategy distilling down to simplify, shrink, and scale. Simplify. All legacy configuration and integrations that were built over years now seem to be somewhat unnecessary. Shrink. Once we simplified the technology, we consolidated the tools, processes, and technologies where possible. It was a smaller footprint, but a cleaner footprint. Newer SAN technology allowed for reduction in co-location space and cost. Scale. By removing clutter, the team maximized the capability of our technology, and this helped us to get to a place where we were ahead of business demands. With these three principles at the core of our work, everyone on the team could see their impact in delivering the strategy. Whether they were simplifying, shrinking, or scaling our technology, they were a part of a large-scale effort to support the future state of the organization. This strategy didn't talk about markets or revenue. Instead, it was easily applied to the IT team. As a CIO, it's your job to translate the commercial goals of the organization to relevant and actionable strategies for your IT team. This is where you add value as a technology leader and further your strategic presence at the executive and board levels. Employing standards. Finally, let's review the necessity of standards for high-performance teams. As a leader, standards are essential in setting objective baselines and removing emotion from conversations about delivery expectations. Standards exist to align your team and can be extremely helpful if you use the right ones for your environment. For IT services, there are many international standards like ISO 20000 for IT service management, COBIT or ITIL, Information Technology Library. For information security, there is ISO 27001. Depending on your industry, there may be other standards that apply directly to your organization, such as the payment card industry, PCI, Data Security Standard, DSS, or HIPAA. But adopting third-party standards alone won't transform your IT team into a high-performance team. Achieving compliance with the standard sets your team up to deliver to a minimum baseline, not a maximum output. Hitting the minimum baseline is an important milestone on your way to creating a high-performance team, but it is not the finishing line. So, how can you utilize standards to make a high-performance IT team? 1. Select the most appropriate standards for your organization and team. 2. Augment or supplement the standard with additional requirements that suit your organization and team. 3. Drive the team toward achieving compliance with the standard and be sticky about remaining compliant. You want to build in incremental improvements and keep the team from slipping back to old habits. 4. Recognize the standard as the norm, your minimum baseline, and establish that no member of the team should accept anything below that baseline. It's imperative that you select the right standard for your team at their current level of maturity. The standard your team works to doesn't have to be internationally recognized or published, but your team must work to the quality and level, i.e. the standard that is right for your organization. Blindly implementing published standards just to be compliant isn't a good approach. The end goal is to raise the level of performance, not to blindly comply. Let's go back to our first example. Objective 1. Improve system reliability. Strategy. Have no single points of failure. Standard. All production equipment and devices need to be purchased with enterprise-grade 24/7 365 support from the vendor. Standards enhance objectives and strategies. This example standard outlined that any new production hardware, software, or device must be purchased with a certain level of vendor support. While some published standards mentioned equipment maintenance, in this case, it was a standard set from within. With this standard in place, there was no ongoing discussion on what support to purchase with the kit. It was just a given that our hardware had to have support. The CIO was also aware of the support in place for all production equipment from the beginning, so they didn't waste their time checking when they needed to respond to an incident. Standards allow your team to move quickly and ease the burden on leadership and practitioners alike. This ease helps your team to respond faster and conduct more productive conversations, both hallmarks of high-performance teams. High performance starts with alignment. The foundation of a high-performance team is unity, and it's up to you, the team leader, to bring every member of your team into alignment through clear, collaborative communication. The collective efforts of your team define success for the group. When that effort is concentrated around clearly defined objectives, strategy, and standards, high performance is highly likely. Once you've mastered the basics of high-performance teams, it's time to learn about developing authority, ownership, and motivation. Creating a High-Performance Team by Richard Harpur, Part 2, High-Performance Teams, Authority, Ownership, and Motivation. Leading a high-performance team is all about how you communicate objectives, strategies, and standards to the individuals on your team, and in turn, how your team members respond to and make use of authority, ownership, and motivation. These three factors play a major part in your team's ability to deliver on your technology strategy. As a technology leader, it's your role to build an environment where autonomous team members thrive and consistently deliver on your organizational objectives. Your success in doing so depends on turning the elements of authority, ownership, and motivation into tools that inspire your team. Authority drives clarity and accountability. Authority doesn't just include your authority as a leader, it applies to each member of your IT team. Exercised correctly, authority brings about the clarity necessary for improved performance and reduces inefficiency, confusion, and rework. Authority is also a catalyst for accountability. If your database team is accountable for the performance of databases in your organization, then they also need the authority to make decisions such as what hardware will support the databases, the density of databases per server, backup schedules, test restores, and more. Once you empower your team to make decisions by granting the necessary authority, the team becomes accountable for performance. With authority, teams no longer defer responsibility to leadership. Unclear authority at work. A legacy application written using a combination of C# with significant business logic written in SQL regularly experiences performance issues at month's end. The code is performing poorly under the load, and the database administrator DBA team can only do so much to keep the servers running. They explain that it's a code issue and they cannot do anything to improve performance, apart from providing additional resources such as processing power and memory. The development team duly requests the DBA team to get faster, more powerful servers to run the code. The DBA team doesn't have the authority to fix the offending code, as that is the responsibility of the development team. Clear authority at work. Instead, provide the DBA team with the authority to make changes to the SQL code, remove inefficient code, and replace it with high-performing code. Once month's end comes around, if there is a problem with performance, then the DBA team will be responsible for the issue. They have the authority to change any piece of SQL code, server configuration, and hardware that runs the database. What will ultimately happen is the issues will get resolved at their root cause, as opposed to blaming underperforming hardware. You won't have these recurring problems for long periods of time, or, at a minimum, you'll have a roadmap to resolve the problems with confidence and speed. It's imperative that as you delegate authority, it's given to the correct people. Team members with authority will have the greatest impact on achieving your goals and will take responsibility for their part in delivering for the team. Keep in mind the overall mission and ensure lines of authority are used to progress towards that mission instead of away from it. Ownership drives performance. Don't confuse authority with ownership. Ownership is an activity of performance, while authority is the right to act and make decisions. A poor leader may have authority but not deliver on the ownership. Similarly, a person taking ownership of a product or service without having the authority to do so will encounter barriers at some stage, even if their intentions are noble. Unless an owner has the authority to be an owner, they will not be effective. However, once you get both elements in place, you can start to make progress. Once an owner is granted sufficient authority, they get down to the business of making decisions, providing direction and clarity, and clarifying what needs to be achieved in a particular product, service, or role. What follows proper ownership is a domino effect. The owner makes decisions. Decisions bring clarity as to what the rest of the team needs to get behind. That clarity paves the way for them to push ahead with delivery. Additionally, proper ownership leads to teams working in sync with other teams and holding each other accountable. Distribute ownership correctly and you'll get more scalable organizations and more accountability throughout your team, making your job as a leader easier. To help you scale and be an effective leader, try to ensure that all your areas of responsibility have owners assigned from your team. Your job as a leader is to provide oversight and maintain overall responsibility. Motivation comes from trust and respect. Techniques for motivating technical teams vary greatly depending on the company environment. Motivating teams at startups with real survival threats varies from established companies with significant scaling or quality issues, which varies from dictatorial organizations focused solely on personal profit for founders with minimum regard for team members. Whatever organizational culture you find yourself in, you can increase the performance of your team members by first showing them respect. If you don't show individual and collective respect to your team, you won't build trust. Without that, it's very difficult to build and sustain motivation. Remember, you are asking your team members to join you on a mission, to do things that they sometimes don't understand or fully agree with. You're asking them to stretch their performance and deliver greater results. You can only do this if the team member believes in you as a leader. Take some time to understand what drives your team members and tailor your technique to their type. Here are a few common types, drivers, and things to watch out for. Type 1. The new tech evangelist. What motivates them? This person is driven by experimenting with new technology because it's new. Arrange a safe zone for them to research and adopt new technology. Make it clear that they have freedom to experiment and explore, but anything that needs to be used in core business systems requires all the necessary support structures. You need these people on your team to help you advance your technology stack. Things to watch out for. Encourage the use and interest in new technology, but ensure you don't get into a situation where wrong, bad, or unproven technology is being slipped into key parts of your organization. Most systems remain in operational use for years or decades, which requires significant consideration around operations and support over the long term. So, be appropriately cautious about introducing something because it's trendy. Type 2. The learner. What motivates them? This person also has a great hunger for knowledge. But unlike the new tech evangelist, the learner doesn't have to be working on the latest technology. They are happy closing their knowledge gaps for existing technology. Professional certificates that demonstrate skills are important to this type. Publicly acknowledge and recognize their learning achievements and ensure they have plenty of access to ongoing skill development resources. Consider providing them with a portion of their time purely for learning. The more they really understand a piece of technology, the more your organization will gain value from it. Things to watch out for. Be careful of the use of technology just for the sake of learning without a true business value return. The time investment put into learning should be measurably paying off for both the individual and the team. Type 3. The career climber. What motivates them? This person is on a mission to advance their career. Titles and recognition are important to them. They'll want to take on more responsibility and be seen within your organization as a person who is advancement driven. You can motivate this person by having clear job roles and corresponding titles that are meaningful and real, combined with a path for the person to achieve the next rung on their career ladder. Things to watch out for. Watch out for shortcuts, weaknesses, or single points of failure that might be overlooked as the team member moves from position to position. If some positions require a large learning curve and investment by the organization, keep in mind that this type may not sustain a tenure as long as other types. Creating a High-Performance Team by Richard Harpur. Part 3. High-Performance Teams. Playing to Strengths. Playing to the strengths of your team isn't about doing what team members want and nothing else. Instead, it's about recognizing the strengths of each individual team member can bring to your organization, being aware of their limitations, and then structuring your organization around maximizing their contribution. When done correctly, this is mutually beneficial for the organization and the team member, and is an essential component of creating a high-performance team. The following tips will get you started on maximizing the strengths of your team to operate at a high level. Embrace differences. Not everyone you hire or work with will think, work, and behave exactly like you do. The truth is, you don't really want them to. Different people possess different strengths and weaknesses. It takes many different types of team members to make a successful team. For example, the skill set required for running a high-performance operations division and ensuring that systems operate within SLAs is very different from the skill set needed to design and solve a business problem with a technical solution. Being aware of the need for different skills will help you to move more quickly in positioning your team members into the correct roles and in hiring new team members to fill the gaps in your team's composition. Consider this real-world scenario. One team member is highly driven in their database role. They are motivated by learning new technology, attending conferences and training. They value learning new things, staying current with technology and applying new technology to existing problems. Another team member is simply one of the best service delivery people in the industry. These two team members with very different personalities, strengths and talents would complement each other and deliver far more together than either could deliver on their own. The cliché of 2 + 2 = 5 is true here. If you can recognize the differences in your team members and get them working in a complementary manner, they will elevate each other. Assess your team's strengths. The key to assessing your team's strengths depends on how well you already know each individual. Have you worked with them for years, or are you about to hire new team members? Depending on the scenario, there are a few approaches you can take. Observation. You can learn a lot about your team members by simple observation. Observe how they undertake their day-to-day responsibilities. Are they very well organized, well planned, and do they deliver work on time with no surprises? Maybe they are more creative in bringing new discoveries and suggestions to the table, but could not plan even simple tasks with any degree of accuracy. As you observe, remember that your own biases may influence an objective assessment of your team members' strengths, so always supplement your observations with data. wherever you can. Listening. Listening to your team members gives you far greater coverage in terms of assessing their strengths than observation. You must do this in the correct sequence in order for it to work successfully, and you have to provide a safe space for team members to share freely and vulnerably. Feedback. If you can establish trust among your individual team members, they are more likely to come to you with feedback and assessment of their peers, which provides you soft data to form a more complete picture of your team's strengths. Establish an open channel for trusted feedback from your team members, about your team members, and even about you. Then act on it appropriately and quickly. Your team members will learn they can provide honest, candid feedback to you, and then directly to you and to each other. Assessment. Psychometric assessment can be useful when you don't know the individual you wish to assess, or have no opportunity to assess the individual's past performance. This type of assessment is commonly undertaken during the interview stage to help organizations select candidates and position them within the team. Know your organizational needs. Depending on the stage of your organization, you will have different requirements from your team. High performance will mean totally different things to a startup doing 2 releases per day than to a mature enterprise doing 2 releases per year. If you are a startup organization and trying to launch the first product, a high-performance team for you means having a team that can anticipate the needs of the customer, build a product with reasonable quality, and do everything quickly. At this stage of maturity, your organization is selling to customers that value the solution you are bringing to their problem. So a product that's a little rough around the edges is usually not a deal breaker. Compare that to mature organizations selling to large enterprises, where customers may have much more stringent requirements and expectations of the product. For example, a large enterprise's security needs or global footprint may mean things like SSO 24/7 support or localization into different languages are non-negotiables, which could kill deals if those features aren't present and polished. When you are creating a high-performance team, you need to be aware of the maturity stage of your organization, as well as what you need to deliver to customers, and then address the gaps within your organization. If you remain with an organization during the transition from startup to securing multiple enterprise customers, you will have to regularly redefine high performance and reconfigure your team accordingly. Get your team to gel. The goal here, and the overarching goal of this guide, is to create high-performance teams, not high-performance individuals that happen to work on the same team. Teamwork needs to be fostered, supported, and mentored. As a leader, your role is to forge links between team members so they can solve problems together instead of running every team function through you. Instead of having strict one-on-one weekly meetings, consider changing to one-on-two weekly meetings, where the trust and respect can start to triangulate. Consider with this approach until you have all your team members in a single weekly meeting and no longer need to hold time-consuming one-on-one meetings. By doing this, you will establish trust and respect across your entire team, and they will work together more closely. Let's look at how this process might take shape in a real-world example. Your IT operations manager comes to you with concerns about a new solution that's being deployed. The solution architect notified the operations manager that he wants to put this into production next week. The operations manager requested documentation for the new solution so that all required documentation can be written up and training of the operations team can take place. The solution architect feels there is nothing complicated in the new solution and thus no need for documentation. This kind of misunderstanding is common. The solution architect has strengths in the design and delivery of new technology, but is not really that interested in the ongoing support and maintenance. The operations manager is more concerned about the support and customer impact than the solution itself. If this scenario occurs in your organization, you can take comfort in the fact that you probably have the correct people in the correct roles already. The solution architect is solely concerned about creating new technology and solving business problems with technology. And the operations manager is concerned with keeping the lights on. While there may be a minor trust issue between the two parties, it's a net positive that they both care about their ownership and roles enough to make their voices heard. It's good that they are advocating for the area where they have strengths and experience. To help create a strong high-performance team, you need to improve the interaction between the two team members and establish greater trust between them. You may need to broker this in the early days to help both parties understand the needs of the other, but once you have set it in motion, it should gather momentum on its own. Once you've established a high-performance team, you'll know it. Your team will work without reverting to you for affirmation and will bring forward improvements and advancements to your process on their own. Remember, the definition of a high-performance team will change as your organization grows, matures, and changes over time. Your team may need to change multiple times to stay in sync with the organization's demands. But once you've got the skills to evolve, your organization will benefit greatly.
Thank you for listening to All Hands on Tech. If you enjoy this podcast, please rate it on your platform of choice. You can see show notes and more info at pluralsight.com/podcast.